An elderly man with which detail in the draft best shows the writer's use of reflection to Which detail in the draft best shows the writer's use of reflection to develop the narrative? Excerpt from The Color of Freedom. An elderly man with kind eyes behind rimmed glasses. An elderly man with kind eyes behind rimmed glasses sat behind a computer. "Hello, son," he greeted Andre. "How can I help you?" "Well, I've come to buy the blue 1976 Ford Ranchero that has been sitting right there for the past few months," Andre explained, pointing to the empty spot on the lot. "Oh," the man said. All his hard work had been for nothing. Tears began to form in his eyes at all his hard work had been for nothing. Tears began to form in his eyes at the thought of riding the bus home. Seeing the disappointment in Andre's face, the man said, "You know, we have quite a few cars for sale in the back lot." "Well," Andre started. "They are priced about the same." Andre's heart sank. While he had been painting Mrs. Robinson's kitchen, someone else had casually driven off with his car. All his hard work had been for nothing. Tears began. Read the passage. Then choose the correct way to complete the sentence. The author develops Pasha's character by "Hey, Pasha," called Samus as he crossed the parking lot. "What are you doing this afternoon?" "I was thinking about catching a movie." "Thanks, but I've got big plans today," Pasha. "Today is what day?" asked Samus with a confused look. "The day, silly," answered Pasha. "I finally saved enough money to enroll in the beginner's class at the Motorcycle Safety Association. I'm headed there now, as a matter of fact." Samus stared at his friend in disbelief. "Wait a minute," he said as he stopped in his tracks. "You actually enrolled in the motorcycle riding class? I never thought you'd do it. I thought it was just another project you act excited about and then drop in 2 weeks."
Kinda sounds like this one.
"I thought it was just another project you act excited about and then drop in 2 weeks." "Don't be silly," replied Pasha. "This isn't like the time I wanted to volunteer as a clown for the children's center or start my own dog walk. Once I get my first bike, I'll travel all over the world just like my hero, Lois Price. Isn't she the woman who rode a motorcycle from Alaska to South America?"
Whoa.
Samus asked as they continued walking toward the dark gray MSA building. "Yes, that's her," said Pasha. "I got to meet her last year when she gave a speech at the History of the Americas Museum. She talked about following your dreams, and that's exactly what I intend to do." A loud roaring sound filled the air as Pasha and Samus entered a Motorcycle Safety Association. They stood in the lobby and looked out at an indoor gym filled with people of all ages on motorcycles. Pasha felt a brief rush of insecurity as she watched the writers. Isn't she the woman who wrote her? Which two sentences in these excerpts from Kate Chopin's The Locket reflect the theme of holding on to love despite time and distance?
Oh, I've done
The
this one
letter had
before.
made Edmund heartsick and homesick. He stretched himself on his back and looked straight up at the blinking stars. But he was not thinking of them nor of anything but a certain spring day when the bees were humming in the clematis, when a girl was saying goodbye to him. He could see her as she unclasped from her neck the locket which she fastened about his own. It was an old-fashioned golden locket bearing miniatures of her father and mother with their names and the date of their marriage.
It wasn't that
It was
one.
her most precious earthly possession.
That's what I answered last time. This is what I answered last time. I don't think that was it though. Which reflect the theme of holding on love, having distance. Maybe it's these two. They reflect the theme of holding love, despite.
It had returned to her sanctified inner eyes, made precious as material things sometimes are by being forever identified with a significant moment of one's
That seems right.
Amid the blur of green and dimly, she saw familiar faces and heard voices as if they came from far across the fields, and Edmund was holding her. It was as if the spirit of life and the awakening spring had given back the soul to her youth and bade her rejoice. The author includes details that show that Homeowners are responsible for 13. The typical apprenticeship with a Japanese traditional boat builder lasts 6 years, during which an apprentice can expect to spend a lot of time sweeping the shop floor and sharpening tools while watching the master ply his trade. Work is conducted in silence, questions are answered elliptically, if at all, and, by the end. Excerpt: Work is conducted in silence, questions are answered elliptically, if at all, and, by the end, the master will have withheld key pieces of knowledge that the apprentice is expected to acquire through guile or outright theft. A central idea in the excerpt is that the Japanese art of boat building may be lost to future generations. The underlying detail shapes this idea by showing that the system for learning Japanese boat building is to Based on the passage, what is the best inference that can be made about rather than allowing developers to tear down old buildings simply to put up new ones, local governments could enact ordinances to preserve their area's architecture.
Rather than allowing developers to tear down old buildings. The author creates tension by showing that the narrator (20) They go beyond your imagination and create a world so special that you start living in it. I was a dreamer once, and still am today. I still have the same dream that I had as a young boy. The problem is that I grew, but my dream did not. I always wanted to be an artist. I love the smooth texture of canvas and the colors, shades, and lines that Okay, so he's good at dreaming.
Not that. Oh. One, two, 4, 5. Oh, okay.
The Roman Catholic Church was another important influence in the centuries before the Enlightenment. This influence continued into the pre-Enlightenment and early Enlightenment periods. The Church greatly affected the lives of people in Europe. It also played an important role in European politics. European kings and queens sought the approval of the Church during their reign. For example, new monarchs might seek the support of the Pope if their right to the throne was questioned. The Pope's approval strengthened a monarchy's position in the eyes of the common people. Earlier developments helped inspire Enlightenment movements that rose up against the monarchs and the power of the Catholic Church. One was the signing of the Magna Carta by King John of England. This revolutionary document limited the power of the monarchy. Another important contribution was Thomas Aquinas' writings about natural law. Drag each tile to the correct box. Match each term with the appropriate description of pre-Enlightenment life. The causes of the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment was a philosophical movement that took place in Europe from around the mid-17th century through the 18th century. The thinkers behind the rise of the Enlightenment focused on reasoning and philosophy to teach liberty, progress, and tolerance among people. They strove to end certain abuses of power carried out by the Catholic Church and government leaders. Many of the rights we take for granted today have their origins in the Enlightenment. As people began to incorporate new ways of thinking into their lives, the idea of what rights people had and what they were capable of doing began to change. Let's take a look at what led to the Enlightenment. The Scientific Revolution. The scientific revolution was an important development that set the stage for the Enlightenment. Before the Enlightenment, the Catholic Church had enormous influence over the development and approval of scientific thought. Once the Church decided that a scientific idea was true, anyone who thought otherwise was seen as going against the Church. Philosophers with a background in science brought about a scientific revolution. They began to use observation and experimentation to establish and publish true scientific principles, even if those principles. One of the early.
Wonder if I could just do the mastery test.
How did Adam Smith's ideas influence the Enlightenment?
Adam Smith's influence. The ideas influenced the Enlightenment. They prevented governments from enacting free trade policies. Doesn't sound exactly right. They were impractical. That sounds a little better. It sounds like this one. I remember they talked a lot about a free market. It might be that. Let's see. Through his promotion. Okay. Which two scientific theories? Oh, Isaac Newton. Okay. What sounds familiar with him? Force of gravity. Is that the guy who did the gravity thing? Oh, yeah, I remember I just read something about that. Laws of chemistry. Position of the sun. Wait. Position of the sun. Position of Earth. No, it's two. Okay. Yeah. See the guy that threw the stuff down? Okay. Yeah. Okay, Isaac Newton is the one that made the items fall. That means he also studied. Well, he had the scientific theory for the law of motion.
Select the text in the excerpt from the English Bill of Rights that states that those elected to office can speak freely while conducting government business. And thereupon the said Lords Spiritual and Temporal and Commons, select the text in the excerpt from the English Bill of Rights that states that those elected to office can speak freely while conducting government business. And thereupon the said Lords Spiritual and Temporal and Commons, pursuant to their respective letters and elections,
States that those elected to office can speak freely while conducting government business.
that the pretended power of suspending the laws or the execution of laws by regal authority without consent of Parliament is illegal. That the pretended power of dispensing with laws or the execution of laws by regal authority, as it hath been assumed and exercised of late, is illegal. That it is the right of the subjects to petition the king, and all commitments and prosecutions for such petitioning are illegal. That the raising or that the freedom of speech and debates or proceedings in
That those elected to office can speak freely while. That sounds right, but I don't really understand. Match each characteristic to the correct philosopher. I remember Adam Smith. Believes in absolute. That was probably him. I remember he was all freedom of the people. I think this is what it means. Yeah, Adam Smith was like a good guy, I think. Believed in the free market. Treatise on Toleration. Probably this. Did he do this? To try to understand the laws. Okay, Adam. Probably he sounds more like this. Alright. Voltaire, but the Treaty of Toleration was a strong advocate of religious tolerance and freedom. Adam Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations and tried to understand the laws of economics using Newton's laws of motion. Okay, The Wealth of Nations and Understanding Laws of Economics was Adam Smith. And Voltaire was a strong advocate of religious tolerance and freedom, believed in absolute freedom of speech. Wrote the Treaty on Toleration. How did the scientific revolution... I read about this. How did the scientific revolution influence the Enlightenment?
A. It helped monarchs rule their kingdoms better by implementing natural law. B. It weakened the power of absolute monarchies and promoted constitutionalism. C. It helped the Catholic
Sounds like
Church understand the wonders of scientific discovery. D. It promoted the use of reason, observation, and experimentation in social and political life.
It sounds like it's D from what I remember, but I just don't really remember. Oh, I got 5 right. I was not expecting that. Whew. Yay. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. That took way too long to do. And I still have so much to do. Let me double check what I have to do. Government, world history, where is it? Oh, I already did US government. Oh, here it is. Okay, 41% done, and now it's 44% done. I got 3% done in that time. Well, that's a lot better. Last before. Now I probably want to do more English since I want to get... I'm only 42% done with English, so I want to get started back in English. Have the first 2 units done. So it'd make it a lot safer if I started No, I want to do the pretest later, which means I can't do that right now. I'd probably be okay if I took a break though at the same time. Maybe I could get more biology done. Oh, I have the post test on evolution.
In a particular mouse species, two extremes of a phenotype are equally selected for over several generations. As a result, the genetic frequency for these two phenotypes begins to increase over the pre-existing mean trait. What type of selection has occurred?
Oh,
In a particular mouse species, two extremes of a phenotype are equally selected for over several generations. As a result, the genetic frequency for these two phenotypes begins to increase over the pre-existing mean trait. What type of selection has occurred?
ooh, I don't remember
In a
this at all.
particular mouse species, two extremes of a phenotype are equally selected for over several generations. As a result, the genetic frequency for these two phenotypes begins to increase over the pre-existing mean trait. What type of selection has occurred?
It doesn't sound like it's sexual selection. Maybe it could be. If it was people, that would be the case. Stabilizing? Destructive? Yeah.
Unwanted dumping of chemicals has caused pollution in a particular region, leading to a decrease in the number of insects. Bluebirds feed on these insects, and bigger birds prey on the bluebirds. What effect would this situation likely have on the population of the bluebirds and their predators? A.
Bluebirds. Wanting the bigger brain. The populations of bluebirds increase? No. Population of bluebirds and a number of the population of bluebirds and the number of predators will not be. It's either D or E, because they have more things to eat too. Right? $50. So it's like 17? One, 7. What about 50 plus 34 plus 16? Oh, yeah, so there's 100, and dominant. Mm. Two. What about 100? Divided by 50 times 34 minus 16. 52? Well, that's kind of got me somewhere at least. So maybe it's A. I honestly don't know how to do this though. Okay. PEMDAS, parentheses, E. What does PEMDAS stand for? PEMDAS, parentheses, E. What was it? E. Parentheses, exponent, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. Okay. 100 multiply 50 divide 34 and add 16. 163. Well, maybe it's D. Unless it did it wrong. 40. Yeah, I don't know how to do parentheses, so. $163. That could be it if I just round it.